why do you think the most interesting worm diseases are in tropical areas?
Why are the most interesting worm diseases in tropical areas? I don't really know. That's just seems to be where they're located. I think a lot of it has to do with the climate and the temperature, is they can support some of these worms better. You know, moist, damp sort of soil and air and those sorts of things, whereas here we've got cold winters and things like that that would kill off those sorts of worms. So who knows, maybe as the world continues to warm through global warming, they'll start moving our way.
That's a scary thought.
It is, but with a lot of global travel, you know, doctors here in the United States used to not really see many of those sorts of infections, but as people travel and are in the military and come back to the United States from places like this, doctors here in the United States are starting to see a lot of these sorts of infections. We actually see a lot of malaria infections in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Which we used to not see, but because of travel, you can see most anything anymore.
That's interesting.
A little scary too.
Yeah. Now, what is the most interesting thing you've personally seen with your career?
Oh, well, unfortunately I'm not an actual physician. I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I'm not an actual physician, so I don't actually get to really get out and see patients. But when I was doing research, my research was on the immune system in the female reproductive tract, and I was interested in how we fight off sexually transmitted infections, particularly things like gonorrhea, chlamydia, those sorts of things. And so I spent some time in a pathology lab looking at hysterectomy specimens. So they would, you know, women for whatever reason would have their, you know, uterus and fallopian tubes and those sorts of things taken out. So getting to actually see some of those organs, you know, because I've never been in surgery, I've never seen a cadaver body, any of those sorts of things, but getting to see some of those organs that are the ones that I'm interested in the immune system, to me was really cool. And you got to see some of the pathology, like I saw a fibroid tumor, which is really kind of just a big hard knot of tissue that shouldn't be there in someone's uterus. It was the size of a softball. It was bigger than the actual uterus itself. And you can imagine what kind of pain and discomfort that might cause a woman, and you know why they would need to have it taken out. But just seeing some of those sorts of things are just, to me, amazing. And I can see why people would want to be doctors and surgeons. Just the blood's not for me.
Now, what is your favorite part specifically of the immune system? Like, why do you think it's the most important?
The innate immune system, which is the earliest part of the immune system, because if you don't get that really early response with things like neutrophils and macrophages and dendritic cells, none of the rest of it happens. You don't get any of those T cells and B cells, you don't get any of those antibodies, you don't get any of that memory that'll help you fight the infection the next time you encounter it. We'd be sick all the time if we didn't have an innate immune system. In fact, there are individuals that have deficiencies or genetic defects in parts of their innate immune system that have chronic infections, particularly with bacteria, that stay sick almost all the time with things like strep throat or pneumonia, things like that that we take for granted that we can, you know, get rid of or cure or it will go away, but they stay sick with it all the time because their innate immune system doesn't work, particularly the neutrophils.
Now, if you have an autoimmune disease and you die from it, it normally isn't from that disease. It's from your immune system not working and you catch something else.
Can be. It absolutely can be. So a lot of times with an autoimmune disease, your immune system is kind of overactive. So sometimes, yeah, if your immune system isn't working right, it's typically from another disease, not actually the autoimmune disease. But there is one called lupus that can actually affect any organ in the body. And that actually can cause damage to some of the organs like the lungs and the liver and things like that. And that's one where you can get primary damage that could lead to death from the actual autoimmune disease itself. But typically it's usually due to some other sort of thing because the immune system isn't working right.
Now, is lupus like common or is it very rare?
For an autoimmune disease, it's relatively common. I don't know what the percentage of people that have it is. One of the things that is known is that it's actually a little bit more common in African American women. And so it's more common in women in general, but particularly in African American women. It's one of those genetic things that for some reason certain autoimmune diseases hit, you know, Asian women, some hit African American women, some hit Caucasian women. Lupus seems to be more predominant in African American women for some reason. It's not really clear as to why that is.
That's really interesting to know how the genes can be different
Mm-hmm.
in something like that.
Absolutely. Well, and just the fact of having estrogen and progesterone, being a woman, having those versus testosterone makes a huge difference in how the immune system functions, and can lead to autoimmune disease.
Why do you think that is?
You know, estrogen and progesterone, we typically think of those as things that regulate the menstrual cycle in women.
Mm-hmm.
But so many cells throughout the body, particularly in the brain, you know, things like the breast, the lungs, the heart, all of those, almost all the cells in the body have some sort of responsiveness to estrogen and progesterone. And so they can regulate all sorts of, you know, biochemical and physical responses throughout the body. And it just, it's a major controller of everything from, you know, the menstrual cycle to the immune system to even how the brain develops in the uterus, or in the uterus, so in the fetus.
Wow.
Yeah, hormones are cool too.
Now, even being like an immunologist, you have to
Mhm.
take hormones into effect, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a lot of what I was looking at when I was doing research, was looking at how the cycling hormones of progesterone and estrogen affected our ability to fight sexually transmitted diseases. Because there's certain times during the menstrual cycle that women are more likely to become infected with sexually transmitted infections.
Wow.
Because of the way the levels of their hormones. And so if we can somehow bridge that gap, you know, kind of fill that window, or make the immune system respond better during that window, you know, might be able to decrease the number of sexually transmitted infections that women get, particularly with things like gonorrhea or chlamydia that women most of the time don't know that they have.
Now, would you say hormones could be a part of the immune system's physiology?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Huge regulator, part of the immune system's physiology.
Okay. I think we're out of questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.